This happens obviously on the heels of President Trump's speech, and you had Al Green, who kind of made his statement, who caused chaos and ruckus early on in the speech. It actually felt like it was going to set the tone for the speech, where you eventually had to have Mike Johnson kick him out, officially get someone to take him out. Now, there are consequences with this. This is not uncommon, because I even asked those questions myself, said, hey, well, what happens in this situation typically? What happened when the guy yelled, "You lie"? And you said this was the same thing, but the difference is the way the Democrats are acting, unlike the way Republicans are acting, which is just to take your consequence, which is barely anything for that matter, barely anything, and deal with it. Instead, you had a politically motivated show that happened on the floor.
That's right. So there are 3 punishments the House of Representatives has for their members when they have bad behavior, in their opinion. Expulsion, which is what happened to Congressman George Santos, kicked out of the Congress. You have censure, and then you have reprimand. This was a censure vote. It is where there's a resolution passed that basically shames you for your behavior.
And they basically just go bad.
And then afterwards, you're supposed to, if it passes, you stand in the well and the speaker reads it publicly into the record with you standing there. When you say the well. That's the upfront part of the House of Representatives
floor. People know.
But I think we should play it here. What happened after it passed when Speaker Johnson was about to read the censure resolution.
The yeas are 224. The nays are 198, with 2 answering present. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The House will come to order. The House will come to order. Shh. Will Representative Green present himself to the well? By its adoption of House Resolution 189, the House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
You may say, hey, freedom of speech, you can do what you want. And look, there are moments where I also think you've got to play politics. And was this the best move politically? I'm not sure for the Republicans. Maybe move on. But I get that this is sort of industry standard. This is the practice that they do. It is a very minimal amount of scrutiny, if you will. And of course, they turned it into a moment. And that is something you always have to be thinking about. When you also are working in the media and you're working with something, it's become the number one story now on television. It's become the number one story that we're talking about today. Was that the best move, or was the best move to show the successes that were happening from President Trump?
I think it was the right thing to do. 10 Democrats also believed it was the right thing to do because they voted with the Republicans on the censure. I think that there are people within that party that realize it wasn't a good look. That is the first time a member of Congress has been removed from a joint session like that. And that it doesn't need to become the norm. And so you do need to show the repercussions that when you take that. Now, I also think there should be a censure vote for every one of those that tried to disrupt the proceeding, that got up there and stood around him and sang loudly so that they couldn't move on with the people's business. But, you're also seeing that there were people like David Axelrod, who was saying what Al Green did was deplorable or despicable, that he should not have done that. And then you see John Fetterman. He's tweeting out a sad cavalcade of self-owns and unhinged petulance. It only makes Trump look more presidential and restrained. We're becoming the metaphorical car alarm that nobody pays attention to, and it may not be the winning message. That was responding to the behavior of the entire House Democratic caucus, that the way they behaved during the speech. And so while I understand your concerns about giving them a media moment again, I also think there's a large portion of America, when we talked about 76% in that CBS poll that approved of President Trump during that message, it's also going to be a reminder of how poorly the Democrats came across, and then they doubled down on that bad behavior 2 days later. So I think there's also that angle you could look at, that they're not doing themselves any favors trying to make it be like they are the righteous warriors standing up, because protesting during a speech like that and not honoring the decorum, that's them rejecting the democratic norms that our country is founded upon.
Yeah. Maybe we need a little bit of that. Maybe we need a little bit of shaking it up. Maybe we need actually make this a bit more of a spectacle. I sat there, and when that moment happened, it made me nervous, especially coming off of 2 assassinations attempts of President Trump. When there starts being chaos erupting, that got to me, and I felt uncomfortable watching it. But I'm also okay with our elected officials actually going in there, representing their people, and doing what needs to get done. And sometimes that's getting everyone a little worked up. Sometimes that's rabble-rousing a little bit. Sometimes we need take a little cue from our friends in the United Kingdom, where things get a little crazier in the Parliament. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I saw a lot of you cheering that on when there was the whole Speaker of the House situation, when that all went down a few years ago with McCarthy. And of course, there was Matt Gaetz and all of them causing a stink. And I'm like, I don't think this is very nice. And a lot of people said to me, we don't want nice anymore. So you know what? Pick your poison here. Which one are we going to do? Are we going to get into the point where this is old school America? Where you're like, when I mean old school, I mean like hundreds of years ago now, where, we're
1700s.
We're going to write some real mean papers that we're going to release. And we'll send, someone will have a different pen name, but we'll all know it was you, Hamilton. We'll know it was you, Benjamin Franklin. Man, maybe we need to get back to that.
You look at this group and you can't help but think it's like they've lost any of the swagger that they may have been able to have. That President Obama, when he was able to be a celebrity president to some degree because he appealed to people, he was a good speaker, he had that kind of, you wanted to hang out with him sort of vibe. They don't have any of that left, and it really brings to question how would they even be able to rebuild from this?
We went through this as Republicans a couple of times after Mitt Romney's loss to Obama. We had a real come to Jesus about who we are and who's going to be the messengers. And one of the problems that the Democrats face is that the media doesn't demand that they do this. You watch MSNBC, you look at the New York Times, and they are protecting this ineffective democratic machine.
I think it's still going to grow, even with the punishments, because they are trying to make it seem as though they are a martyr for the cause. This is the first time a member of Congress has been removed from a State of the Union or joint address. And it's going to continue to grow. One, because we know that members of Congress love to be on television. And when they can be the one that gets a little bit extra bookings on CNN, on MSNBC, and they get to tell their sad story about how they stood in the gap to defend democracy, instead of respecting the traditions and the institutions, they're going to keep doing it. And that's a problem.